Before long, we'll be selling this house and moving into a high-rise condo. So you better start looking for a new place." Maggie's mother, Karen, sneered, "You're not thinking you'll get a dime of our father's inheritance, are you? We're having you relinquish your right to it. You got that, Ashley?" My sister threatened me, her face a horrifying mask of cruelty. Ashley's boyfriend stood to the side, his laughter only adding salt to the wound. It was unbearable. Our father's funeral had barely finished, and they dared to talk like this. "You heard the absolute worst. I can't stand this anymore. I'm cutting ties with you all." The moment I shouted those words, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man I felt like I'd met before. "My name is Maggie. At 22, I'm soon to graduate from university. Nothing to brag, but I'm strong-willed and patient. From my childhood through university, I've always quietly and diligently focused on my studies. I've maintained reasonably high grades, and I do have dreams I want to fulfill. Although I'm content with my daily life, I'd also have a significant worry. Maggie, come downstairs now." A loud voice rang from below. With reluctance, I went downstairs to find my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley. "Mom, sis, what's up?" "I was studying, as usual." "You nerd. You're still studying even though university is almost over. What a hard worker." The one laughing was my sister, Ashley. A beauty like our mother, she's flamboyant and was even a popular model back in the day. Now she's unemployed, under the gaze of helping around the house. "We're going shopping. You should clean the dishes and do the laundry. Don't forget to iron properly, okay? Also, we're out of detergent and other things, so you should go shopping." Mother calmly ordered me to do the housework, knowing she would get furiously angry if I talked back. I quietly responded, "Okay." I left the house stressed out to the nines and high in spirits. "I need to get on with that," I muttered quietly as I started to clean up the mess they had left behind. Mom, a former beauty queen, has extravagant tastes and loves luxury. She's always favored my beautiful sister while ignoring me since I'm not all that pretty. Moreover, they've always dumped housework and other chores on me as if I'm their maid. My sister took advantage of this, and I've been oppressed by them since I was little. Yet I've tolerated it because, after all, we are family. And then my phone rang. When I looked at my phone screen, it read Dad. "Hello, Dad, it's been a while." I could tell my voice had brightened. "Oh, Maggie, it's been a while. Are you doing okay?" "I'm doing great. How about you, Dad? It's night there, right? How's work?" "I'd like to say I'm fine, but I've been having headaches lately. I'm planning to go see a doctor soon." "How's your schoolwork? Is it going well, Dad? Take care of yourself, okay? Thanks to you, everything is going well. I'm studying hard to achieve my dream." "That's my girl. You're always so diligent. Remember what I always say, be righteous and kind, right? Don't worry, I'm doing my best." That's my Maggie. I'll bring lots of souvenirs when I come home next time. After that conversation, I hung up the phone. To put it bluntly, my family is well off. This was largely due to my elite father, Harry, who has been flying around the world for work since his younger days. Although he was often away from home, he was kind to me and showered me with love whenever we had the chance to meet. I adored him dearly. However, to my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley, he was nothing more than an ATM. The harsh truth was that they were living lavishly on the money he earned. "Be righteous and kind, Maggie," he would say. His presence was always nurturing and supportive. He was my rock. That's why I was able to stay strong until now. Several months later, shortly after I graduated from university, a chilling event occurred. "Maggie, Dad has..." Karen burst into my room, her face as pale as a ghost. Apparently, my father had collapsed at the airport as soon as he returned home and was rushed to the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Ashley, Karen, and I immediately headed to the hospital. There, my once strong father lay frail and helpless. "We suspect he's had a stroke," the doctor informed us. Despite extensive treatment, my father barely improved. To be specific, he was left with severe physical paralysis and a speech impairment, unable to stand or converse properly. To care for my now dependent father, I decided to put my dreams on hold and dedicate myself to his care at home. Predictably, Karen and Ashley completely ignored him, treating him as if he was useless. They didn't even help with his care, let alone come by to see him. "Mom, Ashley, if you helped with Dad's care once in a while, I'm sure he'd be really happy," I pleaded. However, their response was always the same. "We're too busy. We've left Dad's care to you." "Dad, it was a lovely day today," I would tell him. "Thank you." He would struggle to reply. I studied and learned about caregiving. I made sure he could see outside by keeping the curtains open, fed him specially prepared meals, and arranged fresh flowers every day. Though I had help from professional caregivers, I did everything I could for him with all my heart, remembering my father who had worked so hard for us and showered us with love. I was desperate to do everything. Whenever times got tough, I would recall my father's words, "Maggie, always be righteous and kind," and each time it gave me the strength to carry on. One day, I overheard Karen and Ashley whispering in the house. "Thanks to Dad's insurance money, I was able to buy that bag I wanted," Karen said. "I know, right? Thanks, Dad. Maybe I should get a new wallet too," Ashley chimed in. I held back from yelling at them and continued to listen, only to hear Karen utter something even more shocking. "If Dad were gone, we'd receive a few $100 million from his life insurance and inheritance he's been saving up through his job and investments." "Wow, Mom. And we should totally buy a luxury condo, and my boyfriend could live with us." "Oh, I wish Dad would hurry up and die." Indeed, I couldn't bear it any longer and left the scene. My father was struggling to stay alive, and yet they were spending his insurance money and dreaming about a luxury condo from his inheritance, wishing for him to die sooner. I felt like vomiting out of anger and despair. In reality, my mother and Ashley had been living it up recently, buying up brand name items and even leaving my father and me behind to go on overseas trips. But there was no way I could tell my father, who was already having such a hard time. I didn't want to sadden him. Pretending I hadn't heard my mother and Ashley's conversation, I devoted myself to taking care of my father. Many friends and acquaintances often came to visit him. They all loved him. I particularly remember an older man in a suit and glasses who often came. I wasn't present, but he was probably an executor from my father's company or something. He would bow his head and greet me whenever he saw me. I was happy that my father was loved, and on the days when he had visitors, his face seemed brighter. I thought these days would continue, but a few months later, my father had a stroke recurrence and suddenly passed away. I cried, clinging to my father's body that no longer spoke. Even my mother and Ashley shed tears this time, mourning the loss of my father. What followed was a whirlwind. There was a wake and a funeral to be held, and of course my mother, the chief mourner, did nothing. Neither did Ashley. In the end, I had to go through all the procedures by myself, running around in a rush. The wake ended, and many people attended the funeral, with numerous flowers arriving as well. Seeing the character and popularity my father had in life, I felt somewhat comforted. At the funeral, sobbing voices echoed, and my father, with a peaceful face, embarked on his journey. In the evening of the day when the first 7 days were over, I had finally started to recover a bit from the sadness. As I was cleaning up the 7th day, my mother and Ashley called me into the living room. Next to Ashley was a man who was said to be her fiancé. Like Ashley, he looked good, but given his former job as a male stripper, his inner frivolity was clear. Apparently, his name was John. "So about father's inheritance," my mom began. I had a terribly bad feeling, and then my mother, laughing scornfully, said something outrageous. "We'll get a lot from your father's inheritance, so we decided to sell this house and live in a luxury condo. So you should leave." "Mom, it's only been a week since Dad passed away. Are you already talking about the inheritance and the luxury condo?" "We've already signed the contract. It's a high-rise, brand new." "You've already signed. When did you?" "About a month ago, I guess." "A month ago. But Dad was still doing fine." "Huh, he was practically dying. He had a lot of money, so it'll work out fine. My mother was selfish as ever. Ashley continued, yes, that's right. The luxury condos for Mom, me, and my fiancé. So, you're a nuisance. You should hurry up and find some shabby apartment, okay? Even you, sis? Are you serious? Of course. Don't even think about getting any of Dad's inheritance. We'll have you renounce it. You understand, right? Ashley was approaching me with a terrifying expression, and next to her, her fiancé was laughing. Seeing my father's inheritance in the corner of my eye made me feel suffocated. It was too much. They had the nerve to say such things before my dad's mourning was even over. You guys are the worst. I can't stand it anymore. I'm cutting ties with both of you. Huh? We'd actually feel relieved if you cut ties with us. My mother and Ashley laughed at me. I clenched my fists and started trembling. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. Straightening my trembling breath and wiping my tears, I'd opened the door, thinking it might be a late visitor. Good evening, my condolences for your loss. The man who deeply bowed his head at the entrance was the middle-aged man in a suit and glasses who frequently visited my father's sickbed. Thank you. Please come in. As I was about to invite him in, the man presented his business card. Please check this. My name is Watson, an attorney assigned by your father. The business card indeed belonged to a law firm, and although I had not noticed it before, a badge denoting him as a lawyer was gleaming on his chest. A lawyer? I was surprised. My mother, Ashley, and her boyfriend came out from behind. Huh? What does a lawyer want from us? Watson responded to my mother's skeptical expression. I've come to discuss your husband's inheritance. Can we talk for a moment? Watson sat down in the living room. My mother sat directly across from him, and Ashley and her boyfriend sat next to her. I ended up sitting on the side facing them alone. Watson took out several documents from his bag, looked at us, and then began to speak slowly. First, may I read your husband's will? That man could barely move or speak, and yet he left a will. Get on with it, please. My mother spoke in an irritated tone. Then allow me to read it, Watson said in a quiet voice. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths as follows. The testator leaves all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. A moment of silence fell upon the room. The testator designates the following as the executor of the will. Before Watson could continue reading, Ashley interrupted. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The testator designates the part before that. Let me read it again. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. What does that mean? Karen, our mother, and Ashley exclaimed in unison. I was so shocked that I couldn't breathe, and all I could do was stare in astonishment. Watson continued, Next, I will read the postscript of the will, looking at me. In other words, this is your father's final message. I quietly listened as he read. Maggie, you gave up your precious dreams to take care of me. I wasn't able to pay much attention to you because I was always working, but I truly appreciate it. Thanks to you, I was able to pass away peacefully and fulfilled. Upon hearing my father's last words from Watson, tears started to well up in my eyes. Maggie, always be kind and correct. I know you can do it. Your father will always be watching over you. Please be happy. All I could do was sob in front of them while Karen and Ashley were making a big fuss. What does that mean? So the inheritance all goes to her? Yes. What happens to our money? In response to their outburst, Watson cast a brief glance at them. You two are not mentioned, by the way. Maggie is also the sole beneficiary of the life insurance. What are you talking about? Do you think that's allowed? Karen turned beet red, ready to burst at any moment. That's right. Isn't there something called a reverse portion that's supposed to be guaranteed to the wife and the children, right? Ashley leaned forward eagerly. You're referring to the statutory reserve. Indeed, you two have the right to claim a statutory reserve from the inheritance Maggie will receive. Watson said in a matter-of-fact tone. Of course, Karen seemed to be getting back to her usual self. Even if there is a will, if its contents are unfair, you can claim a share of the inheritance prescribed by the civil law. However, Watson continued, Harry had commissioned us to investigate the fact that you, Karen, and you, Ashley, were living luxuriously with Harry's money and squandering the insurance money. The eyes of Karen and Ashley widened in astonishment. Indeed, you purchased a luxury condominium and a car, and you spend quite lavishly on host clubs and overseas trips. All the caregiving and household chores were left to Maggie alone. Moreover, there were even remarks hoping for Harry's death. My father knew everything. He knew everything but pretended not to know. That's my mother. Stammered Watson responded calmly. In this case, it's unlikely that the distribution of the inheritance will be deemed unfair. Even if you take it to court, it's very unlikely you'll be able to claim anything. Of course, you can try if you wish. I'll be the one you'll be set up against. My mother's face had turned a pale blue. That's ridiculous, my sister also muttered. When Watson was leaving and I walked him out to the entrance, he said, Maggie, you have grown up to be quite admirable. Your father always spoke of you with such joy. Really, my father has known your father since we were young, and I was honored to take on this request. Your father felt he was too lenient with the other two, but I believe he found peace knowing how well you turned out. Watson's eyes were squinted in a warm smile. I was so touched that I teared up again. Please live a happy life from now on. You know I'm always here to help. Watson left me with those words, and I kept bowing deeply to him. A year later, with Watson's help, I was able to inherit all of my father's assets. As for my mother and sister, my mother, unable to pay off the loans for the high-rise condominium, had already contracted the expensive car and the designer goods, eventually went bankrupt. My sister, on the other hand, was quickly abandoned by her boyfriend when he'd learned that she wouldn't be inheriting anything. I heard through the grapevine that she's now living with my mother and working part-time. They called me for a while, but I kept replying, I've cut ties with you. Please contact me through a lawyer. I thought that was what my father wanted too. Now they don't contact me at all. As for me, I used my father's inheritance to attend a law school I had once given up on. Originally, I wanted to become a prosecutor to uphold my father's words, always be kind and correct. But now, my dream has changed. After working with Watson, who had saved me in my time of need and provided unwavering support, I started to admire being a lawyer myself. So now, I'm studying hard to become one. I strongly wish to become a lawyer like Watson, who is always just and kind.